Good evening everyone and welcome to the Epping Forest Local Council Liaison Committee on Thursday the 20th of March 2025. I'm now going to read out the webcasting introduction. So I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting will be filmed live or recorded and uploaded to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Therefore, by participating in this meeting, you're consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings. If any public speakers on MS Teams do not wish to have their image captured, they should ensure that their video setting throughout the meeting is turned off and set to audio only. Members and public speakers are reminded to turn on their microphone before speaking and turn off the microphone when they've finished. So, good evening everyone again, and my name is Councillor Louise Mead. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Council and I'm chairing the meeting today in place of the Chairman of the Council. To my right is Councillor Wixley, who will be my Vice Chairman for the meeting today, having been appointed for the 24-25 municipal year. And our webcaster officer is far right. And next to Councillor Wixley is Vivian Messenger from the Democratic Services, who will be taking the minutes. We have Andrew Small, our Acting Chief Executive, he's on Teams. And to my far left is Paula McGuinness, Service Director for Corporate Services. And Nigel Richards, and Interim Monitoring Officer, and Nigel Richardson, Service Director of Planning. We also will have Gary Woodall joining us later. He's the Team Manager for Democratic Services and Elections. And we also have Councillor Keska to my far left. Okay. So before we start, can I just remind you to put your hands up to indicate if you wish to speak and to go through the chairman if you wish to respond to ensure the smooth running of the meeting and so that everyone can be heard clearly. So, number 2 on the agenda is apologies for absence. So, do we have any apologies for absence?
Shall I go first? I've received apologies from Councillors Burrows, Lee and County Councillor Chris Whitbread, and also apologies from Ongar Town Council.
Councillor Wixley, do you want to...
Thank you. Yeah, just apologies from Councillor Chris Pond as a county councillor.
Thank you. And Councillor Keska, you had your hands up?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm actually going to repeat that. Ongar Town Council have a meeting tonight, and as they're a bit short of councillors, if they sent anyone along, they might not have a quorum, so they have said their apologies.
Any other apologies? Yes, Epping Town.
Beverly Romsey, our clerk.
Thank you. We made a note of that, yeah? Any others? Brilliant. Okay, so thank you. So can I remind members, county councillors and town and parish council representatives to sign the attendance register? That should be going round at the moment. Thank you. So that makes sure we have an accurate reflection of attendance. Thank you. So agenda item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 21st of November 2024. Are there any, that's pages 4 to 27. Are there any matters arising from those minutes at all by anybody? Councillor Wixley?
Yeah, I think before we get on to matters arising, I think I've got some issues about the accuracy of the minutes. So I think that's the first item that we tackle first. I think some of them are just minor typing errors, but I have got a question on them, a matter arising. So, looking at the minutes of the meeting of the 21st of November last year, in the apologies, as tonight, Councillor Chris Pond, I gave apologies for him, but he's down as P Pond. So, the correct way would be CC Pond, so he's not confused with his wife Caroline. So, that's last time it was down as P Pond, but there isn't a P Pond, it should be CC Pond. I think also, from what I can remember, from perhaps people who should have been recorders having attended the meeting, and I can only refer to 2 town and parish councillors I happen to know were here last time, but not recorded in the minutes. One was Councillor Carol Davis from Loughton, and the other one was Councillor Liz Burns from Hayden Boyce, but that may have been because perhaps they missed signing the register. But Chairman's already mentioned that tonight, if everybody can do that. Just going over the page on the minutes, there's a reference here at the top of the page 2, Councillor Ken Williamson confirmed in the meeting that a sum of almost £500 had been paid to the Conservatives of Epping Forest. Now, my guess is that eyebrows would be raised extremely high if that was the case, probably the highest that they've ever been raised. So I'm sure that actually means Conservators of Epping Forest. So if not, I think questions will be asked. So, just going over the page, I think this is item 16.4, and I know that Adriana Jones will agree with me with this correction because it refers to a meeting where Councillor Chris Whitbread, as leader of the council, agreed to meet with parish and town councillors. In actual fact, it should have just been parish clerks. I think we agreed with that when we had a pre-meeting. So I think that's probably all my questions about the minutes. I just got a matter arising because I asked a couple of questions last time, and this might be one for Andrew Small to answer as he's online tonight. What I asked about last time, and I didn't get quite all the answer, but I asked about 106 agreements. And my question was that when we collect this money, does it accrue interest? And is that interest payable to the district council, or does it go to the body which receives the 106 payments? I don't know if Andrew could answer that.
Chair, with your permission, a partial answer, I think. Certainly accrues interest in terms of all of our cash balances do, but as to whether it's attributed to the 106 pot, I don't know. Nigel Richardson might have a better idea than I, but if not, I can go away and find an answer to that one.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure myself, to be absolutely honest. I think we'll have to come, if Andrew, if you don't mind taking that up. I don't know.
Yeah, I did ask last time, so I would appreciate if we could get to the bottom of this. I'd be interested to know.
Can we make a note of that to answer Councillor Wicks's question later on? Yeah, thank you. So is there any other issues in regards to the minutes from the 21st of November? Yes. Councillor Davies, yes.
Yeah, it was just, I've not seen it in the minutes, but I do recall from the meeting that Graham Courtney did say, well, I will have to come and have the visit at Loughton to discuss planning, and so that to make sure we've got it all straight. And we've not had an arrangement to sort that out yet, so that would be really good if he could still, if the offer is still on, if he would come and speak to planning in Loughton. That was it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr Richardson.
Yeah, I'll remind Graham. We did talk about it afterwards, and he said he would attend, so I will take that up.
Any other issues regarding those minutes? Can we then, if there's no other issues, can we sign them off as agreed? Can you say agreed if you agreed? Yes? Thank you very much. We can move on. So we're now on to item 4 of the agenda to discuss the following issues raised by local councils. And number 1, and over to Mr Small to answer those questions, if possible, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to answer the questions as they stand, really. I kind of realise this forum is a forum for parishes to seek answers and ask questions of the council. But I'll answer the question as it's written, and I'm happy to take any follow-up questions on devolution or LGR. It does say what's the council's position in terms of devolution, and I do wonder whether parish councils, councillors meant devolution or whether they meant local government reform, because the two are distinct and separate as well. Because devolution is the creation of the mayoral authority, or the election of a mayor for Greater Essex, whilst LGR, local government reform, is about the creation of unitary councils. So I think the position for the council in terms of devolution is probably less well defined, really. One of the things that we kind of realise is that district councils aren't constituent members of the mayoral combined authority, and as such, we have a lesser role really. It operates at a level above, more akin to the county really, but a level slightly above that. It operates across Greater Essex and is involved with strategic services, of which most of which don't really touch upon us. I mean, sort of in some of the economic development activity does, but strategic transport doesn't, for example. We have an interest in a couple of areas around devolution, and that's probably around spatial planning, including spatial housing planning, and that has a potential for us to have another organisation who is has responsibility for allocating where housing growth goes within the county of Essex. But the exact role that the mayoral authority will take in regards to spatial planning is yet to be defined. So it has the potential to impact upon us, but at this point in time, we don't quite know exactly what that will look like. But most of the other activities will complement what we do as a district council, then subsequently us replaced by unitary councils. So, in terms of that question, same question in terms of local government reform in unitary councils, I took that question to mean, what's our position in terms of, what's the shape of unitarisation that Epping Forest would like to see across Greater Essex. And at this point in time, our position is very much, I think everybody would like to have councils that are relevant to a locality, so local as they can be, and reflects the geography and patterns of work and housing and need and so on, and economic growth. But I think we're also very clear that whatever is created in terms of the groupings of unitary councils with their geographies, they need to be sustainable. So I think great to have a council that's really local and reflects the needs of the communities, but if it can't function because it hasn't got enough resources available to it, and too much demands and too much need, then it won't solve the needs of those residents adequately really into the future. So I think very much we're clear at this point in time that we need to be led by the data. So we need to understand what the groupings might look like, how they might be funded, what the demands might be upon those, what communities they'll serve, all of those issues before we can make an informed decision about what the right number of unitary councils is. And that's our position. There are a group of councils in Greater Essex who have already reached a conclusion that they would like to see 5 unitary councils representing Greater Essex. But as far as we're concerned, that's in the absence of the data to support whether that's the right number or not. I think very much at this point in time, we'd like to understand what the options are before we can make a decision about which will work best for the residents of Greater Essex. The second part of that question is, how does Epping Forest see town and parish councils' role within that? Which, and I think my view is, and this is a personal view, is that the role of parish and town councils will probably be enhanced under unitarisation. I think because they're the closest to the communities. If you collapse district and county councils together, then there's distance from those organisations to residents in their locality might be slightly further. I mean, in terms of administration as opposed to physical distance, and I think in that space, I think parish and town councils will have an enhanced role. But the key point is that the role of parish councils and the relationships to the unitary councils isn't something that we can determine. That the only organisation that can determine that relationship will be the new unitary councils. So I think conversations about exactly how they will operate in practice can be crystallised until such time as the shadow authorities are created, which is 1 year before go live date for the unitary councils. At that point in time, they'll start thinking about their relationship, and it is their sovereign right to do so. They'll start thinking about their relationship with town and parish councils in the locality. Not all of the areas being considered are currently parished, of course, and so there are gaps. In Apollo, for example, it is unparished, and there will need to be community governance reviews, I expect, probably parish, unparished areas, to make sure that whatever exists in terms of that kind of layer of local councils is universal across the unitary area. But again, that community governance review can only be undertaken by the shadow authority. So there's work to do in that space, I think, before we know the answer of what it really looks like. What the outgoing councils can do, though, is put in place some proposals, I think, for the new shadow authority, and that's something that we'll be looking at in the next few months before the final business case is put together for government, I think, in September. But all we can do is sort of make suggestions, give options, or make recommendations. Only the shadow authority can make decisions upon the relationship between town and parish councils and the new unitary council. So, as I say, it will never be our sovereign right as Epping Forest District Council. It will be the sovereign right of whatever replaces us in the future. Shall I pause at that point, Chair, and see if there are any questions on the back of that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Small. I'll just see if there's any questions on any of the points he was talking about. Yes, do you want to?
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, which was very helpful. I understand everybody's in a period of time when we're in the unknown, and you have parish and town councils that are quite eager to, be part of it, get going, find out what's going on, get clarity. And in the absence of information, it potentially is that parish and town councils start creating their own narrative because there isn't any information. So I think that's why we're eager to get some information. But I recently watched a webcast from Chippenham Council. I know they are a big council, but they said it took between 6 and 10 years to actually work through the devolution proposals for their council. So in terms of asset transfer and what their increased responsibilities were. So the timescale is very large, and I'm just wondering how long you anticipate the timescale changing or being until parish and town councils find out what's happening. So that's question one. And in the meantime, what happens with things, as a typical example, parish council has a lease supplied to it by the district council, but the district council will no longer exist. What happens with that lease? That's just an example.
Mr. Small, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, can do. So a couple of questions there. Timelines, that's a really difficult one to answer, if I'm honest with you. I worked through Buckinghamshire reorganisation, still a resident of Buckinghamshire. I know community forums, groups were created to represent parishes and localities on day one. But, I think it's important to recognise that the shadow authority will have a lot of things that it needs to do prior to go live. But in practice, what it can do is limited by legislation. So there are only a fixed number of things that it can actually do. Some of the government stuff, setting a budget, for example, terms and conditions for staff. There are a limited number of things that the shadow authority can do prior to go live. The real work starts on day one, our vesting date for the new unitary council, when it starts taking decisions in its own name, as opposed to the shadow authority, which morphs into the unitary authority on vesting day. And at that point, it will probably have an awful lot of things that needs to do one way or another, an awful lot of services to try and make sense of, and a lot of things to reorganise. Transformation doesn't happen until after go live date. So most services come unreconstructed at that point in time, and the new unitary council will have to prioritise a lot of disparate services, imperative really from constituent authorities that make it up, and it's not just individual district councils, but there's also a proportion of the county council services as well. So it's going to be really busy. How it chooses to prioritise the role of the relationship with parish councils is only something that the unitary council can determine, I think, and it could take a long time, or there could be arrangements put in place soon after day one. I think it will form part probably of the business plan that goes into government in September, and the government is really keen that there is full consultation around those proposals. So I think that there will be a space for kind of parish councils to add their voice into what they would like to see, I think, before the government makes its decisions. So there is certainly going to be a space for the parish and town councils can make representations, I think, on what they would like to see. The second question was about what happens to some of the operational stuff. I think everything will just port over into the new unitary council. So any agreement for lease, for example, will be novated or transferred across to the unitary council, and then will continue probably in its current vein until such time as the county council gets round to looking at its assets. Not sort of the county council, the unitary authority gets round to looking at its assets as part of a wider transformation piece. But that could be some time. I think the relationship between the operational relationship between the current parish councils and the district councils, which will morph into the unitary council, will look very similar, I think, on day one. I don't think much will change, and all of the legal agreements will just transfer over into the new unitary authority. So I think in that respect, I think town and parish councils should or don't need to worry particularly about some of the, whether things will be just left hanging on day one. They won't. They'll all transfer over legally, and it will be sort of nice and tidy on day one. But as I say, at some point in the future thereafter, they will need to look at all of their assets and all of their arrangements, and no doubt in time they will consider that. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Is there any other questions to Mr. Small at all? No? So we can move forward. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew Small. So we're now going to go on to 4.2, which, and there's four points on that, which Mr. Richards is going to take through for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So the first question asks whether the town and parish councils will be involved in the 9-month review of the new planning committee structure that we introduced towards the end of 2024. The short answer is yes. Part of that question asks how and when will this take place. I think we said 9 months would take us to July this year, so that's when we're looking to do that. But I've got to be honest, we haven't really thought through what the process of that will be. But certainly parish and town councils you will have an opportunity to comment on the structure we've got at the moment. I think it's worth noting here, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the government are looking beyond what we've done. There's a talk of a national scheme of delegation and a national, local planning authorities committees. So be prepared. I think there's going to be further delegation to officers from where the committees are at the moment. Now, we haven't got the details of that yet. There's some, I've seen some different variations of that. I think one of them said something like anything that doesn't conform with the local plan goes to a planning committee. So just be prepared that there's going to be potentially further changes. I'm just being honest here. Householder applications are not going to go to planning committees. I can't imagine a national scheme of delegation saying householder extensions go to committee. But anyway, once we get that information, we will share that with you. But in terms of our own scheme of delegation and committees that we introduced at the end of 2024, yes, that will be a July review. Has anybody got any questions on that part?
Yes, please, answer the question. Ask the question.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us are aware and slightly worried, but it seems that the District Council got in early before this was going to happen anyway. Do you see that as an even greater reason to do a neighbourhood plan? Because suddenly your neighbourhood plan has policies within it that have to be considered, whereas residents' voice and parish and town councils' voices are being diminished.
I suppose a neighbourhood plan does give you that local say and speech, so that could be an opportunity for you to consider bringing forward neighbourhood plans. Of course, a neighbourhood plan is meant to be in conformity with a local plan, and of course the NPPF has its amended. I'm hearing there's going to be another revision of the NPPF coming out in May that will have national development management policies with it, so it'll be interesting to see what that includes. I mean, there's no doubt about it, this government wants house building to move at a faster pace than what it already has, and I think that's what's behind all of this. But yeah, perhaps neighbourhood plans might be the time to seriously start looking at that.
I've just got Councillor Davies first, and then I'll take second voice. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say or to highlight that householder applications have a huge impact locally, but they seem to almost be like on the periphery of not being given that much importance and being decided just solely by officers. And I think that that's really missing an opportunity to offload an amount of work onto the town council as far as enabling residents to have more feedback and more to be able to be taken into account more. I think it gives a very bad I don't know, feeling of like complete impotence when the neighbour, like the actual next door neighbour or the neighbours on the street have very, very little impact on a householder application when it's completely agreed and sorted out by an officer. So I think that it's better to have, you know, that more sort of kind of sorted locally, more input locally.
Yeah, if I may come back, I honestly think those days are gone, especially if this national scheme of delegation comes out. What you've got to remember, though, is you do still have a say. You make your comments to us on objecting to householder applications, so that doesn't change, and we take those into consideration along with all other representations. But let's be honest, a planning committee of members should be dealing with big stuff. We shouldn't be dealing with extensions on houses. There's very, very few councils out there that do that. And I think the changes that took place, remember the Planning Advisory Service did advise us, come on, deal with the big stuff, deal with the stuff you should be dealing with, not the householder extensions. So, but you still have a say. Please don't think that your comments are not taken into consideration, because they are. And we don't approve all householder applications. Those that are too big and have an impact on neighbours, undue impact, or on the street scene, we will refuse planning permission for those.
Thank you, Mr Richardson. We have a question from Councillor Byrne from Theda Voice.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, on this revision to the National Scheme of Delegation, is there any consultation on this? Because I thought Graham Courtney mentioned that back in January. And is it consultation for you as a local authority, or is it something we can enter into in the public domain?
Don't know at the moment. I think there certainly was a very loose consultation or a heads up in January about this, and they did invite local authorities, if you wish to, comment at that time. But I'm anticipating a more formal consultation to take place once we have more details on that. But we'll keep you updated.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, if you keep us updated, because there's
Yeah.
so much other stuff going on with consultations left, right and centre, but this is definitely one. And the background that I've read to some of this is looking a little worrying about what size and scale that might be determined under delegated powers, and just as an aside, I know anybody in this room could say it, is that there is an element where when you're having a planning committee meeting, and I know it's awkward when you go on for 3.5 hours or however long it takes, but it is something that's determined in the public domain, and there's an element of public scrutiny, and the residents want to see that if necessary there'll be someone to represent either the objector or supporter, there'll be a parish or town councillor, there'll be the agents, and they want to hear what the committee members are saying and how they're coming to that determination. It's an important part of something that affects their communities, and particularly when you've looked at allocated sites and when you've looked at larger developments. I think it's very important. I mean, I can say this, we might all agree on it, I don't know whether most of us probably would, but that's what the residents are actually wanting to see as part of this process. It's that element of scrutiny as to how the decisions are made. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that? No. Okay, do you want to continue?
Do the next one?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Chairman. So the next question is, can EFDC provide clarification regarding the process around determining the viability of planning applications, including the triggers that are in place to check and monitor viability both before and after development? How is this conducted and who is involved? I think the first thing to note is that I'm sure some of you would have turned up to this. We did do a viability assessment training in December, and a lot of that was covered. So what I'm going to suggest is perhaps as part of the minutes we provide a link to that so you can watch that again. Just to let you know, the viability usually associated with affordable housing is we use consultants, we use BPS and BNP Paribas, and sometimes our Section 106 agreements do have a clawback clause in that where a new viability is done as well. But I wasn't intending to go in detail on that when we've already done training on it, but perhaps as part of the minutes we can provide a link to that.
Yeah. Any questions on that? Yes.
Yeah, just so to confirm, the training was really helpful and it did cover a lot of the questions. So if you could do that, it'd be very helpful. But just one quick question. So the Section 73 minor modifications, and that's how developers are now trying to change what their obligations are. Is that determined by an officer? Does that go to committee?
Funny enough, I spoke to Graham Courtney about this only today. It is actually an officer decision as we stand on that. And obviously we're led by the viability consultants as well.
Okay, any other questions on number 2? Okay, let's carry on to point 3.
Yep, thank you. 3 is, can EFDC provide clarifications of the process of agreeing, making and monitoring Section 106 agreements? I'm going to be brief here as well because we've got training coming up. On a week on Monday, we've got a community infrastructure levy and Section 106 training. I believe it's here, but it'll also be online. And like I said, that's on Monday, the 31st of March. I think it'll start about 6 o'clock. I know it's on our website, but the Parish Town Council, have you been notified of that, if you don't mind me asking? No. Okay.
I've seen it on the calendar, but no notification yet.
Okay, well, I'll speak to Democratic Service. We'll make sure you're notified of that. But if you can put in your calendar now. We'll be using a consultant to do that work who has got good experience of our council, having worked on our local plan. And we're also using Burkitt's, who will be providing the Section 106 training. So I think that'll be a good session. Actually, it might be a good point to inform you that we do have some member training sessions lined up. Not only are we doing the Section 106 and SIL training, there's a custom and self-build training on the 26th of March, so that's next week. That's a virtual meeting. And then on the 9th of April, Urban Design and Quality Review Panel, presentation and training. We haven't got dates in the diary yet, but we'll be looking to do a grey belt one, given that we've got the latest advice on grey belt through the updated Green Belt Practice Guidance that was issued end of February. And there's others to follow, including heritage and the Epping Forest Special Area of Conservation, which is the air quality impact on the forest. We haven't got dates for those yet, but plenty of training to come.
Is there any questions on that? Yes, please.
It's linked to 106, but vaguely. Obviously, there are 3 parishes which are going to be subject to major development: Roydon, Shearing and North Weald, with the developments around Harlow. And in the, I think I've got the right phrase here, the infrastructure delivery plan, where the money set aside, is that going to be protected post-unitary?
Well, I've got no idea.
Because that should really...
I honestly don't know the answer to that. I mean, I would have thought it won't just disappear, but I haven't got an answer to that. Unless Andrew Small, have you got perhaps help me on that one?
I would say, Nigel, I don't know definitively, but it's given for a specific purpose, so it will have to be maintained and respected.
Yeah.
And it will transfer across to the unitary to deliver, deliver whatever infrastructure it was given for already. So I think that any agreement that's in between us, the developer will pass that on to the unitary council, so all those legal obligations transfer over to the new unitary organisation.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, of course. Andrew's right. It's given for a specific purpose. It's linked to the infrastructure delivery plan. So if we didn't use it for a specific purpose, we'd have to give that money back to the developer. So, yeah, I think it's pretty safe. Just caught me on the arm a bit with that question.
And I have Councillor Wixley. Did you have a question?
Well, I was really just going to reiterate what probably has already been said, but with all these training sessions that Nigel's mentioned, I think it's important we know about them, especially if they're recorded, so we can watch them at a suitable time if we can't actually make the training session itself. So I think that'd be very helpful.
Do you know also there is potential as part of the government's thinking on delegation, committees, member training is there, and they're even talking about testing you on member to demonstrate that you can sit on a planning committee. So these are the things that you may have to look forward to doing. Surely you thought the days of doing exams had gone.
Any other questions on that point? No? So you have one more point to 4.
Yep, so 4, can the FDC provide details of any planning policy guidance changes as a result of the new MPPF? The new MPPF is obviously a material consideration, so if there's conflict with the local plan, then the new MPPF we do have to give weight to it, but it doesn't mean the local plan's policies are outdated. We've been asked to produce something called a local development scheme, and we've gone back to government to set out what we're doing in terms of reviewing the local plan and potentially having a new local plan. But I think we're a good 5 years away from having an adopted new local plan. We have received funding to do a green belt review. We were successful in getting that funding, and if anything, that'll probably be the start this year of reviewing the local plan. And of course, as part of that green belt, maybe the grey belt, defining where grey belt is as well. So we will be kicking that off. But in terms of, I think what's meant there when it says planning policy guidance, I think that means the policies in the local plan. But no, they still stand.
Any questions? Yeah, Morton.
So linking that to, and it's just an extra question, linking that to local government reform and devolution, do you just kind of crack on with a local plan, knowing that in 3 years' time, is it not just not a waste of time?
Well, it's still around. If anything, fully enough, I was at the Essex Planning Officers Association today, which is basically chief planners all meeting together, and there was discussion about we're going to have to create these spatial development strategies, and the start of those is potentially April next year. I think we're given possibly a 30-month turnaround period to come up with these. So they're more like, the way I understand that is if you look across the county, that's broad areas of growth, but the local plan will still be the detail. So this, in terms of this spatial development strategy, it's talking about a potential 30-year growth period, potentially 30 years, but it's looking forward beyond the your local plan. So remember our local plan's to 2033, so it's potentially looking beyond that. So my understanding is that I think there'll still be a role for a local plan. It may well end up being local as well, but there'll be this spatial development strategy of broad areas of growth that'll sit above it, which feels like the old regional structure plans that used to have for Essex. So to me, it feels like we're going back to how it perhaps used to be when I first started out in planning, the good old days.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I mean, the obvious question is, okay, fair enough, you have the Epping Forest District Local Plan, Harlow's got one, Uttlesford I think is going to examination in public at last, Brentwood has already adopted one. So if the unitary authority then comes into being, what is it using to determine a planning application, even if, let's say, it was a combination of 3 or 4 districts or boroughs, so which I think is what we're thinking. You can't do it any other way, I would imagine, unless you split boundaries. So how and what are they referring to? Because if Epping Forest obviously becomes part of a larger unitary authority, and say there's an application in Loughton, you're going to use the Epping Forest District Local Plan here, but if there's one in Harlow, do you then say, well, that would have been under Harlow, we'll use the Harlow Local Plan? Can you see that there's a potential problem there?
Yes, I can. Perhaps I'll just leave it to that. Yes, I can. But I mean, if we've still got an Epping Forest District Local Plan, until that's superseded or abandoned, then my view is that would still stand as the local plan for the area which it covers. Admittedly, Harlow would have theirs, and Uttlesford will have their new one. To be absolutely honest, I don't know exactly, but I'd imagine that's how it. But you're right, we're looking to do a new local plan, aiming for 2030. Does that still continue at the end of the day? I don't know.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor.
I think. Sorry, Andrew's got his hand up.
Are you okay going to Andrew first? Yes. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. I just really to agree with Nigel. I think it's quite right, really. I think the constituent local plans carry over onto the new unitary council, and they continue to use those until such time as they create their own single local plan for the new unitary area, which I think they're obliged to do almost immediately. But obviously, as we all know, these things take time. So until such time as they can do that, the existing local plans continue to have whole planning weight really for the intervening time. But I think one of the things that as I've seen locally in Buckinghamshire, I think when the government starts changing the landscape, the new organisation suffers because it hasn't got its own local plan. And so, in terms of actually being able to a defensible position by having its own local plan, it's on a bit of a back foot until such time as it agrees its single local plan for the new unitary area. So it's somewhere, I suppose, a halfway house between the two. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wixley, you had a question, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm just a bit curious, Nigel. You've mentioned all this stuff that's coming down the line. I just wondered what the process is by which it's communicated to the district council. Does somebody sort of phone you up on Monday morning and say, we're going to do this, that and the other? How does all that process work? I'm very curious about this.
Well, the chief planner for England does send out a monthly newsletter, so we do receive those, and of course we are updated by MHCLG of changes. We are also consulted beforehand, knowing what's coming up. So some of these feel like they're coming out of the blue, but we have had heads up. It just seems it's happening at a quicker pace than perhaps what we've been used to before. We've also got, I see Councillor Mary Dadd's online, and I know Councillor Dadd has gone along to some of the Planning Advisory Service seminars, and so has Councillor Williamson. So there's a lot out there actually to advise members of some of the planning changes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And any other questions? Yes, Nazing. Yes, thanks.
I just wondered, with devolution and the unitary things, has anybody gone to other areas that have actually done this already to see how they did it and find out about the processes? Would that be helpful to Essex to have a look at up north or somewhere? There's 39 million people already in a devolved area, so they must have had this already.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Mr. Small, were you able to answer that at all? Thank you.
Can do, yes. That's a good point. And actually, as you'd expect, this is exactly what we're doing across Essex at the moment, is looking across all of the recent unitarisation experience to try and work out what's worked, what hasn't worked, how we can streamline the process and how we can get the best outcome for residents. So we're talking to a number of those areas that have been through the process recently. Cumbria probably most recently, but also Buckinghamshire and some other country as well. So we are learning from their experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Davies, please.
Yeah, I just had one question about pollution. Where does that come into everything? Whose responsibility does it come under, pollution?
Depends what, if you talk about human pollution, that's environmental services, which
No, I'm talking about like traffic and the, if you're going to be building so many houses and you've got certain roads that are very polluted, does that come in? Is that even considered? Is it even considered necessary to bring it down to certain numbers, and is that monitored?
Well, again, there's the traffic pollution is a factor that you take into account as part of planning, but also environmental services. And I think as you well, hopefully you do know, if being in Loughton, the impact on the forest through pollution is a big issue in terms of the fauna and flora of the forest, which is still a factor. And in fact, there's monitoring taking place at the moment on the impact on the forest. So, yeah, it's still planning.
Yeah, I mentioned as well, it is also people's health. The actual rise in, like COPD and things like that. It must be, I would like to see that it's kind of joined up and they do actually see that, the health deteriorating, the certain illnesses that people are getting and how that is reflected in the local population, and that can be really taken into account with development and, the roads and things.
The problem with these things is proof, isn't it? And that's the difficulty. I can't see how we would refuse planning permission on those grounds without showing scientific evidence of that. But clearly, compared with perhaps 10 years ago, these things are more and more part of the planning you know, an emerging new local plan will probably take that into consideration, perhaps more than what the current local plan is. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there's any other questions.
We do air testing as well, air quality testing. Do you want me to
say
come
that?
back on that?
Do you want to,
Yeah, Chairman, if I could just say, the district does do continuous air quality testing on a number of locations, and I'm delighted to say that we are well below the government's recommended levels. But this is continuous, it's happening all the time.
Thank you, Councillor Kesker. We have a question from Epping Upland. Thank you.
Nigel, just to backtrack a tad, with regard to the Green Belt Review and the revised local plan, can you just clarify for me what the timing is on that? Those of us with lots of Green Belt, there'll be a lot of nervousness, as you can imagine. Cheers.
Yeah, the Green Belt Review, so at the moment we're approaching a number of consultants, because we won't do that review ourselves. Along with Harlow, we were given £140,000 to do that review, so we had to put a bid in. It was a successful bid, so we'll use that money to do the review. But we'll be starting that probably this summer, I would have thought. I don't quite know what the process is in terms of how long it takes, but we did a review back in 2016. I think probably we'll take that evidence, look at it, update it. But of course, now we've got this grey belt discussion now about what could be classed as grey belt. In terms of getting, I mean, we might have that done by the end of the year. And I think that's the first start, really, the beginning of the review of the local plan.
Thank you. Any other questions before we move forward? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you.
We're now going to move on to question 3, and that's Paula McGuinness who's going to lead on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the question is, can EFDC explain their legal position in terms of charging town and parish councils for the monitoring officer's time in investigating code of conduct complaints regarding these bodies? I have taken advice when I stepped into the interim monitoring officer role. I did take advice on this. As it is a statutory function of the monitoring officer, we can't. So that's an easy answer to that. As a follow-up to this question, we are at our April full council about to adopt the LGA model councillor code of conduct. I know that somebody from our legal team has asked what code of conducts you have at town and parish, whether it's your own, whether you've adopted the council, and we'll be coming back out to just let you know that we've hopefully at full council on the in April that we would have adopted the LGA model. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions on that point at all?
We have actually got the same and adopted, I think as many did, the same code of conduct as you had. So I haven't seen that yet. Sorry, I'm not, probably it's more to do with the clerk looking at that myself. So if we look at that, is that something that we can adopt? Or I think there's also an ALC one, is that right? There are various other codes of conduct that you can adapt. But I mean, we'll have a look at that to see whether we adopt that and how different it is. Does that make sense? Is that reasonable for us to do it? We were led by the local authority with its code of conduct. Is that acceptable?
Thank you. Yes, it's entirely up to town and parish councils. I think there are certain things that you have to make sure that is included in the code of conduct that's set out by legislation. So as long as your code of conduct and your practices follow that legislation. I think for us, the LGA model, because it's surrounded by a suite of guidance, it makes it easier for us to be able to provide that guidance with ready-made
documents, etc. So, and actually, on a personal note, I prefer the LGA model because it talks about I will X, Y and Z rather than it be slightly more abstract. I think the language in the LGA model probably, yeah, I prefer that to what we have currently.
Thank you very much. And we have, it's Royden, is it? Yes? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paula. That is great to hear. I think you and I have had discussions about the question of charges. Hello. and I applaud taking on the LGA guidance for code of conduct. That is good. One thing I would request is that you do, when you actually publish your code of conduct, you do like other councils are doing across Essex. They have in there, excuse my French, the idiot's guide when what you will do. There's a very good one from Colchester City Council about code of conduct complaints, which is easily obtainable on their website, and it weeds out a lot of vexatious complaints, which will save you a lot of time.
Yeah, there's that the LGA is really helpful in that there's a flow chart that makes it really simple to understand how you make a complaint, where it goes, who does what, and when. Following the adoption of the Code of Conduct, we'll be setting out our arrangements because that is one of the stipulations within the legislation that it's up to the primary authority, which in this case is Epping Forest, and we need to make it perfectly clear to members of the public, town and parish councils, what our arrangements are in terms of complaint handling. And the scope of the monitoring officer in that, because I think there is a little bit of confusion around what powers a monitoring officer actually has in connection with town and parishes. I get a number of questions around governance. The monitoring officer cannot step into a town and parish to advise on governance. It's just the member complaints, councillor complaints that come in.
Exactly. We have our own association, Essex Association of Local Councils. We pay a fee to them, so therefore we take the advice from them.
Thank you, and that's what I've been advising some other town and parish councils, that body is available and they're there to do that very thing.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions to Paula McGuinness at all? Thank you very much, Paula McGuinness. Thank you. So we're on to point 4, and I thought Mr. Woodall might be here, but he may be on Teams. Are you on Teams, Mr. Woodall? Otherwise, I'm going to ask. Yes. Brilliant. Thank you. Are you going to take us through point 4?
Well, I think these are just comments.
Just comments, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Local councils, I'm not sure. There's certainly nothing for me to answer there. I did have a quick chat with Adriana before the meeting, so we're on the same page about the town and parish council charter. But if anybody has any questions in the room, I can answer them or come back to them with an answer.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on these comments on point 4 at all? Nothing? No. Thank you very much, Gary Woodall. So there doesn't appear to be any other business.
What was saying about the charter?
I think he's just answered that. Do you want to ask him a question?
Yeah, just to clarify, I think there's 2 issues, aren't there? One is the Epping Forest Districts Association of Local Councils and their constitution. But the other issue is the charter, which is between the local councils and the district council. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Adriana.
Yeah, so Gary and I did talk just shortly before the meeting. Councillor Byrne and I have been in discussion and we are looking at the latest version. We will be tweaking it once the Epping Forest Association of Local Councils has had its inaugural meeting. Once that's happened, we'll pass that on to Gary. Gary will do his own tweaking, and then between us, we should create something good.
Thank you very much. Do you want to come back on that, Gary Woodall? No? You have...
No, I agree with everything that Adriana just said.
Brilliant.
Thank you. So there's no other questions on that, no? So I can move forwards on any other business again. I don't think there's any other business. Is any other business anyone wants to bring up? No? No? Brilliant, thank you. So dates of future meetings is on agenda 6, item 6. And to note, the next meeting of the committee will be September 2025. Exact meeting date to be confirmed. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And I'm going to close the meeting exactly 8 o'clock p.m. Thank you.
You should do this more often.